and welcome to Quarter Time Podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P.
And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Quarter Time. It's been yet another bye week in the Vitality Netball Super League, which, not going to lie, Luce, I've actually been quite grateful for. A little bit of a break. But that doesn't mean that there hasn't been any netball action. So, Lucy P, talk us through what we've got on today.
So today we're taking another look at the ANZ Premiership. This time it's round 8, and we're analysing one game in particular in detail. So we'll be bringing you a rundown of all the action from that particular game, as well as diving into some juicy stats. Then we have our second player profile with the wonderful Gia Abernethy, Strathclyde Sirens Captain and midcourt powerhouse.
Amazing. So let's crack on. The ANZ game that we're going to look at is the one-goal thriller between Steel and Magic. Oh, mate, it was a great game. So what was interesting for me is that Magic started simple at goal attack, which I much prefer because they, a couple of rounds they've had Grace Cara in there who, although she does feed Bassett really well, it's really, really noticeable that she is a wing attack in a goal attack bib. And they did actually move her into goal attack in the final quarter instead of bringing on absolute gun in Kiana Williams. I don't think Bassett has necessarily had as good of a season so far as she was hoping for, and as the Bassett stands were hoping she would have either. I just don't think she looks particularly comfortable with that knee, and her reluctance to take any shot that isn't sort of directly underneath the ring, I think really hurts the Magic. It's kind of like the same as Grace Nowicki, but the Mystics don't seem to have as big a problem of recycling the ball to feed her as the Magic sometimes do. Bassett was also clearly not a huge fan of the physical presence that Fafita had, who I think actually did a brilliant job to get her hand to so much ball given the height difference of 11 centimetres. And because of that hassling and that pressure, I think Bassett's hand started to let her down slowly but surely throughout the game. So clearly she was being, pretty worn out. So what do the numbers tell us in terms of shooting, Luce?
Well, Bassett only missed 2 in this game and put up 39 from 40 at 95%. And Chara Semple only missed 1. And she put up 19 from 20 at 95%. Bearing in mind, she only played the first 3 quarters of the game. That is pretty good for a goal attack. Those are some good numbers that you would expect to see after a full game. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, Grace Cara came on in the final quarter and she didn't have any attempts. And you just wonder whether that could have made the difference for Magic. And what you were saying about Bassett shooting under the post, I mean, Chara Semple was sinking them from anywhere and she was very accurate from that range. So I feel like you need to have a long range shooter partnered with your tall holding shooter. That's the typical combination. And then looking over at the Steel, George Fisher was obviously 50 from 54 at 92%, and Maturo was 9 from 10 at 90%. I think their combo is pretty rock solid, and it's amazing how it's gelled so quickly. And Fisher still remains the most accurate shooter in the competition, which is pretty cool.
Yes, go George. I love those two. A little side note, what I love the most is whenever George goes to shoot, you can hear Tiana being like, "Oh you, G, oh you," and I'm like, yes, I need a cheerleader in my life like that. So
I love that. Yeah, they look like they've been playing together for years, which is really, really good.
Yeah, definitely. But moving on to the midcourt, I think Shannon Saunders had a freaking awesome game. And as much as I love, George Fisher repping, getting MVP, I actually thought that Shannon was robbed. She was often the only option available in attack for Steel. Even though they did have a good game overall, she was an absolute powerhouse and she has so much hustle to win the ball. So what do the stats tell us about Saunders?
Well, I agree with you. Saunders had a fantastic game. She had 14 goal assists and 29 feeds, which is a good day at the office. But she also had 28 centre pass receives, an intercept, 2 deflections, and 3 pickups, which is excellent for a wing attack. What I find interesting is how well she shares the load with Maturo, who picked up 23 goal assists and 23 centre pass receives. So they really share that load and distribute the ball evenly. And it means that any defensive unit, if they're coming up against them, they just really struggle because they're so difficult to pin down and there's not really a weak link that they can exploit. And I think they just bring the ball down so nicely. And yeah, I'm a big fan of what Shannon Saunders is doing at the moment.
Yeah, I really do think that attacking combo of Fisher, Maturo and Saunders is really starting to settle. And I hope that they retain all 3 of them for next season. Because I do think there's room for improvement with Saunders letting the ball go a bit earlier into Fisher. I think often she's on and she's not getting the ball, but that will come. I think they're doing a great job in the meantime. And in terms of the defence, Magic got out to a really strong start, taking an early lead and seemed to have very little trouble finding the post, but their defence picked up a lot of whistle early. It genuinely seemed like every time the ball was in the Steele shooting circle, either Whakahokotau or Mikaere was picking up a penalty, and some of them I just found really unnecessary, so much so that the umpire then had to call time and pull the captains over with 6 minutes left of the second quarter to basically tell them all to pass on the message to tighten up. And this is really interesting for me because the comms team said that Steele had 18 penalties at that point, but Magic had a whopping 42 after about 25 minutes of netball. So what detail do we have on the penalty front, Luce?
Okay, well, looking at the games overall, interestingly, both teams ended up being very high on penalties, Steele finishing on 63 and Magic on 68. And the most penalised player on court was Erina Mikaere with 18. But interestingly, Tanisha Fafita from the Steele had 7 in the final quarter alone, which was the same amount as Temelisi Whakahokotau in the second quarter. So there was a lot of penalties all over the court. What I found interesting, though, in terms of the penalty count breakdown per quarter, was that in the first and last, it actually correlated to the quarter score. So when Magic had more penalties, they lost the quarter, and when they had fewer penalties, they won. In the first quarter, it was 21 Magic penalties to Steele's 3, and Steele won that quarter by 5. And in the fourth quarter, it was 13 Magic penalties to Steele 23, and Magic won by 3. So interesting, and it'd be cool to see whether that correlates over more different quarters in lots of different games, and if there's any connection between teams winning and number of penalties.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see. So if anyone fancies doing that, just let us know. So what were some of the key overall stats in this match?
Okay, so Magic actually won the second half of this game. They had 16-13 in both quarters 3 and quarter 4, and they even went on a run of 6 in the third quarter. But despite this, the Steele led for the majority of the match from around halfway through the first quarter, and obviously then came away with that very narrow win. Magic's gain to goal rate was 83% compared to Steele's 60%, which is pretty good. But their centre pass to goal was down at 71% to the Steele's 78%. In reality, though, there was not a lot to separate these sides, which is just one of the really awesome things about the ANZ competition particularly. Yeah. After 8 rounds, there are no teams that are unbeaten and no teams have won 0 matches. Also, the goal difference percentage is above 90% for all the teams. So across all the matches, this means even if they're losing, it's not by very much.
And if we compare this to their friends across the pond, over in SSN, each team has at least 1 win after 6 rounds and only 1 team remain unbeaten, which is, of course, West Coast Fever. The goal difference percentage is a little more varied over there, with the Vixens on 86%, but still not too bad considering the Super Shot probably has a bit of an impact on those goal differences as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. Coming up next, we chat to Strathclyde Sirens Captain and former Adelaide Thunderbird, Gia Abernethy, about her playing journey and what she's learnt from her years at the elite level.
It is fantastic to welcome the wonderful Gia Abernethy onto the show with us. Welcome, Gia.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So before we chat to you in a bit more detail about your playing career and how you got started in netball, can you tell us what's the mood like in the Sirens camp at the moment, given the anticipation and the possibility of maybe being in that top 4 in the coming weeks?
It's actually, as you can imagine, a very, very fun feel at the moment. I think the feel before the Wasps match in Copper Box, we knew we had those games left. We knew how the first round sort of played out. So there was a lot of excitement, but probably a bit of nerves as well, just because they were very winnable for us. Like the girls were so competitive for those ones and really wanted to get the points in that match, just because it was a draw last time. So since we've had those games with the Bath one in the middle, spirits are definitely high. Looking forward to these last 2 weeks. It's a funny one when you look at it, because it's going to be a few things need to go our way for us to make it in, even if we do win them. But I think just beating the last sort of 2 wins we've gotten was enough of a pat on the back at the moment that we knew we could do that. So yeah, everyone's feeling great, as you'd imagine.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing, because obviously you had the draws last time, and then this time round you won both of those. And Lucy and I were discussing all the different routes of how people can get into the top 4 last week. It's so difficult, isn't it, to sort of try and work out the puzzle. But yeah, amazing work, you guys. And yeah, wishing you guys all the best for sure. So we would love to hear about your netball journey from the very beginning. So right up to now in 2021, when you're obviously at Sirens. So take us back to the early days when you first started playing netball. Who first inspired you to take up the sport?
Probably, I want to say mum, just because she was the only one when I was that age that was playing netball, but I don't know too much about her journey, because I think she sort of stopped playing when she hit sort of 17, 18. But once I got into it, I have 2 sisters and all 3 of us just loved it. So you kind of just do it because your sisters are doing it, and that's just what our weekends turned into. So mum introduced it to us, but once your sisters are doing something, you don't want to be left out. So joined in just for a primary school team when I was in grade 3. So that was about 7 years old, and then joined club. What was it? I was probably 12. Yeah, joined a club when I was 12, and that was just like, it's called church netball back in Australia. It's got nothing to do with a church. It's just the league that you play in. That was just pretty casual. And then as I sort of started to really enjoy that and play in my older sister's team, I sort of thought, okay, this is actually something that we're not too bad at. Maybe we should try, to join another club that's a bit more competitive. And we joined Contacts Netball Club, which it's a lot of famous Australian netballers have played for them. Everyone's sort of heard of Contacts Netball Club every now and then, but they've got the likes of Catherine Harvey Williams, Nat Bomberto, Laura Bomberto, a lot of Thunderbirds. I think Tracy Neville actually played for Contacts Netball Club for a couple of years, which is just a funny sort of turn of fate that now she's sort of back involved in the league now. So yeah, that was sort of where I got most of my competitive netball, when I was sort of going through that awkward teenage years, 12, 13, where you think, am I actually good at this? Am I not? Am I just tall? What's happening? So, and then ever since then, it sort of was all underage rep teams. There was the under 15s, under 17s, under 19s. You kind of just go through it. And because I kept making them, I was all of a sudden thrown into the pathway with the Sports Institute, selection camps that, you go to your national camps at the AIS, and eventually leading to Thunderbirds training partners back in 2014. Didn't think a whole lot of it, just was happy to be there. And then you guys might remember Emily Beaton. She was the Thunderbirds wing attack, quite tall. She hurt herself, so in a weird twist of fate, I was the next midcourt that got called in to sort of fill in for that. I didn't play at all. I sat on the bench for maybe 12 weeks, as you do back in the day when it was just 7 who played, and that was it. There was someone had to sort of have their leg chopped off if someone had to actually come off the bench. So loved that, enjoyed that. Everything was sort of going as good as it could be. Thought I was, the best thing going. Got released back to my club, and when Emily got better, and then that week back at club, I tore my ACL. So I was like, how good's life? This is great. Can do no wrong. And then, it all just came crashing down. So that year in itself was pretty
Wild.
Crazy in terms of emotions. I'm thinking,
wow.
Here we go, taking off. And then it's like, oh, what do you mean I can't play anymore. So yeah, that was like a huge, huge moment in my, I guess, netball career. You'd say that I just learned so much about myself, so much about my character, what I want to sort of, what I find important in values and all that. And just because you have I don't know if you guys have done any serious injuries like that, but you have a lot of time by yourself, just rehabbing, like a lot of time to think by yourself. But fought really hard in rehab. Like I did it. I was kind of your perfect patient. I'm a physio as well. So I was like, you give me these exercises, I will do them, whatever you need. So got back playing, I think I was playing full games at 9 months, went to nationals, did that and came back, and touch wood, haven't had too many issues with it since, which is great. But yeah, that really did kind of throw a spanner in the works in terms of my Thunderbirds pathway. It was all sort of leading to it, but you have that year out and someone else gets an opportunity, and they took it with both hands as well. So she's a good friend of mine, the other midcourt that got that spot, and she's been doing great things since. But I always felt like I was on the back foot after that, like I was just that year behind, if you know what I mean. So just as a training partner for the next sort of 2, 3, 4 years, and then Dan Ryan became the Thunderbirds coach, and he picked me in to travel for, to go on the match day 10. What year was that? Would have been
2017, I think we found.
Yeah.
We have done a bit of Googling on you.
God.
I can tell
was like,
you.
I think it's 2017. And then you were like, yes, good. Okay, I've got my timeline right. And he put me on in like round 1. I think we were down to fever at halfway through the third quarter. And he was like, Gia, warm up. And I was like, what? Bench doesn't come on. Came on, and we ended up coming back and winning that game. So it was like kind of the perfect debut, if you can imagine that.
We saw one report describe you as a nerveless debutante when you took to court in that match, which I think is an amazing description. So can you take us through what was going on in your head when Dan asked you to go on?
Definitely not nerveless. Definitely not. Because you see it when the coach looks down and you don't really know who they're talking to, but you're like, they're going to tell someone to warm up. And then he just went, Gia, warm up, and everyone on the bench was like, that's you, go. And I was like, and the first thing you do is like, do you want passes? Because you just want to make sure they're okay. And you're kind of like, do I want passes? Like, what do I need to do? Like, everything's like, don't really need to run because my heart rate was going. And Chelsea Pittman was the wing attack, and I've got quite a good relationship with Chelsea, so that was great. And I was coming on, and because it was my home crowd as well, it was just like, just get the first set of pass off. So yeah, definitely not nervous, but I was sort of thought, we're down, so what's the worst that can happen? Like, I can't ruin this if we're already down. And yeah, it flew by. Like, I think it was only maybe 4 minutes to go in the third quarter, and then the whole last quarter. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, I can't remember how many we won by, but it was enough to be up with like 4 minutes to go that you're like, no, we actually have this. And I was just like, I think I threw about 3 feeds, into Courtney Bruce's hands. I was like, oh, but we somehow got it back. But I was like, it's fine, Gia, keep going. So yeah, definitely not nervous, but I'm glad that the media took it that way.
Yeah, I think you definitely came across well in that match particularly. And at this point, you'd obviously had quite a lot of experience. You'd been playing as part of the under-21s team as well previously. Yeah. So tell us about your debut for the national team and what that moment was like. Yeah,
so just the under-21 Australian team was where I had sort of that involvement. It was pretty cool. Usually when you get selected in the under-21 Australian team, you go and play World Youth Cup, or you do whatever the competition is that year. But because the year I was in, it didn't really have anything. It was actually normal World Cup year in Sydney. So our tournament was sort of a camp and matches against all the teams leading up to that. So we got to play the Diamonds a couple of times, New Zealand, Burns, New Zealand A, England were there. So we were kind of their warm-up matches leading into World Cup, which was really cool because you saw everyone's prep. You saw like what teams. I think New Zealand brought over the Silver Ferns and their A team in case there was an injury. So we got matches against both of them. A lot of the girls in the team I was in, like Kate Maloney, Liz Watson, all of them went on to play obviously with the Diamonds. So they were at that age where they were pushing in the sort of Vixens and whatnot. So it's actually a really good competition. I think we lost to the Diamonds by 2
Wow.
We beat New Zealand A. We lost to the Ferns. They were really slick. And then England was a bit like for like. So really strong competition, which was cool. But it was all just their training matches, whereas we were like, game on. This is like our World Cup. So, yeah, that was pretty cool just to be involved in that. So what was so special about that one, you need to play in under-21 nationals to get selected in that Australian team. So the girls that were playing, like Liz Watson and all that, they didn't have to do nationals because they were obviously in the middle of their season playing for Vixens and whatnot. So they were already in. So you kind of need the fillers from that tournament. And that was the tournament that I worked so hard to get back from my knee for. So that was the one that I was playing after like 9 months of my rehab. So I sort of thought, this is my last nationals, underage. We're going for 3 in a row from South Australia. Like, I want to make this. And then to then get picked to play in that, it was just like, yeah, so happy. I was just happy to be there. I looked at the girls on the team and I was like, this is just going to be a fun week because there's no pressure on me. These girls are superstars. I'm just happy to be involved. So, yeah, really, really fun time that one was.
And what was the toughest game that you ever played at under-21s? Was it that New Zealand game?
Probably the Diamonds, just because of how similar the style was and how much the girls in my team wanted to show why they should be there next. Christiana Manua was on against Seabass. And it was just epic. Like, she was coming out for these flies. This when Laura Geitz was still playing, Julie Coletto, they were all still playing. Wow. Renee Ingles. So because we were so goal for goal, that one felt like the most competitive just because we were matching them in all positions on the court. It was funny because the coach obviously has to be like, everyone needs equal court time. This isn't to win. This is for our development. But that last quarter, it was like, no. Everyone stay where you are. Like, we're taking this. So, yeah, that was probably the most competitive and the most enjoyable. The New Zealand one was they were just too good for us. It was almost not like, you try things, but it wasn't really in our reach. Whereas, yeah, the Diamonds one was a very, very fun match.
And then obviously a few years later, we talked briefly about your time at the Thunderbirds, where you sort of sat on the bench for a little while and then you were coming into the squad. And then you obviously had your departure from Australia to come to play in the Super League. So tell us a bit about how this happened. Were you kind of actively looking to move abroad at that stage?
I was actually, yeah. So I was at the point, I mean, not old by any means, but I was 25 and I was thinking, I just don't want to be a training partner forever, just training full time for no money, but committing to all the stuff for no rewards. So every time there was an off season that I didn't get a contract in the 10, I was a bit kind of like, okay, how many more times can I go through this phase? So the owner, Seaman, was playing for the Thistles. Her dad was Scottish, so she was able to play for them. And Kat Tuivai-T knew Gail, who was the Sirens coach as well. And they had Super Cup over in New Zealand, that tournament that they've got, and Gail obviously has that connection. So Sirens got invited. There was a South African team and a Malaysian team. Yeah, it was just a really cool competition, and they needed a few mid-court because they couldn't get all their Thistle girls or Sirens girls over. So they contacted people in Australia, just like, shooters or mid-court, we just need people that can get there to fill numbers. So I was at the point where I was willing to take on any opportunity. I was like, I'll pay for my flights, just like get me there so I can get involved and just see if I can match it. So I met all the girls there, and I wasn't getting really much court time because they were trying to get the international exposure for their Thistles girls. And then midway through the week, Gail, the coach, was like, so we want you to play for us next year. How does that sound? And I was like,
wow.
What? I didn't think you thought anything of me. You haven't put me on. She's like, no, we're really happy with you. We just want to get these girls on, blah, blah, blah. Here's like a semi offer. Can you let us know by Friday? And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Like, wow. But then in my head, I thought, no, because I went into this thinking, this is my opportunity to get a go. I've got the opportunity and they're offering me a go. I always knew I was going to say yes. So I rang my partner back home. He was over the moon. He was like, yep, when are you leaving? Like, we're doing this. And I literally applied for my visa within the next couple of weeks of getting home, and then was on a plane like 6 weeks later coming over to Scotland. So it happened quite quickly, but I was in that headspace before it happened that I was going to say yes to anything. So yeah, it all happened quite quickly, but was so stoked when it happened and very, very glad with the decision I made.
Amazing. And so when you moved to the UK, there obviously must have been quite an adjustment in terms of them playing in the Super League and living in Scotland compared to Australia. A lot more rain, I'd imagine. And what were the main challenges that you noticed in terms of the training environment and just day-to-day life?
Yeah, definitely the weather. It was cold and it was raining a lot. The day I landed, it was actually beautiful. And I was like, oh, why do people wind? And everyone's like, no. Don't get used to it. This is not
you just
how
wait.
it is. Yeah, I was like, this is beautiful. But I knew Kat. I'd been with her at T-Birds the year before and got quite close to her. So she was kind of that sister over here within the team. It was quite nice that I'd met them all at the Super Cup. So I already knew a lot of the, core of the playing groups. That was quite nice. I wasn't walking completely into a new team. But yeah, just little differences. Like I'd come from T-Birds where you have your physio there for 2-3 hours before training starts, because they're professional athletes and they need everything looked at to make sure they're ready to go. You train 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. because that's everyone's full-time job. It's early afternoons to coming here, which is a lot more like club level back home where people have got to work full-time. So training's going to be 7 till 9, like quite late like that. It's just how it is so people can get involved, or if you're not going to have a team. So I guess still training with contacts, my Prem team, I was used to it. It wasn't too much of an adjustment, but compared to T-Birds, it was back to that. Not unprofessional in terms of not up to scratch, because everyone's standards were quite high, but more just, it's job number 2, not 1 for majority of the girls that were there. So yeah, it clearly worked when they offered me another one, because I was like, cool, yep, ready to commit again, had a ball.
Well, speaking of that re-signing, on your second year for Sirens, in an interview, you said, and I quote, "It's put me outside of my comfort zone, helped challenge my character and grow as a person." And I find this phrase of challenge your character really interesting. So can you go into a bit more detail about what you mean by this and what changes you've noticed in yourself since playing in the UK?
Yeah, for sure. That challenge of my character, I really didn't know how I was going to behave, and grow into sort of a young adult, going from living at home, the same state, always in Adelaide my whole life, always played in the same club with the same girls coming through, just familiar. So when I came over here, a whole new country. I know it's English, but it feels like a different language sometimes when they talk. And just, different sort of culture in terms of city and how the league works. And I just had no idea how I was going to respond, and if it was going to, really push me to sort of get outside my comfort zone, grow as a, maturity, independence, all that sort of stuff. And I just found that the type of person I became over here in terms of netball and away from netball, I really started to like who I was becoming. Like I just worked out what was important to me, worked out sort of what added value to my life, and really threw a lot of energy into that, rather than getting caught up in a few things that I was back home, just of, non-selection and balancing work and whatnot. That I really liked the type of character I was turning into being over here, being challenged in all the right ways, challenging Sirens and Netball Scotland in all the right ways, all sort of stuff to help improve on, relationships in every level. So that's probably what I meant by that, challenging my character. And I was quite happy with the growth that I saw and happy with the character I was evolving into.
And you mentioned there about the off-court side of things. So as you've mentioned, you're a qualified physio alongside being an elite athlete. So how important is it for you to have that life away from netball?
It's probably tricky over here just in terms of I didn't know a lot about the visa situation, how many hours I could work, international registration. So I haven't done any physio work since being here, but back home, I balanced private practice sort of 30 hours a week with full-time training. And I was probably very fortunate that my boss back home used to be the Thunderbirds physio. So she completely got it that if I got selected after Thursday night training and had to fly out the next day, I had to cancel my list of patients because I'm involved in, the traveling 10. So she got that, which was unbelievable support. I know not everyone's as lucky as I am to sort of, need less than 12 hours notice that I can't come to work tomorrow. So balance was huge. I knew I couldn't just be a training partner, not earn anything and be 25, hoping that it'll one day happen. So balance was huge. And then coming over here, obviously, that first year, it was just nice to be able to train and not have to worry about anything else. I'd never done that before, just to sort of really see how good can I get if I just dedicate my whole week, just to netball. And then when I signed on for my second and third year, Netball Scotland had been great and sort of offered me an admin role just to sort of fill in my days, get back into that sort of normal week of, routine. You go to work and you have training. So definitely finding more of a balance now, which is great. And they've helped me so much with that support.
And you're one of a number of imports in the Super League who are all in our opinion, absolute icons. The likes of Vinkumbo, Mvula, Liana Leota, Mary Chollock, Danelle Wallum. There's just loads of you. It's amazing. So what has your experience been like as an import in this competition? Have you ever felt any additional pressure to make sure that you bring your A game because you've got this label of being a sort of star import player?
That's a funny one. I think in my first year, because we had Kat Tuivai in the team, I didn't feel too much pressure because I knew she was used to copying that no matter what team she's in, just because of the way she plays and also her name. So she was really good at helping me sort of just figure out what role do you want to play in this team. And once you've decided that, they're your standards, and don't sort of let anybody else hype you up or pin you down that you have to match that. So she was great support in terms of just finding out my role. And then I think moving into my second year, because it was my second year, I kind of just thought I'm a second year Sirens player, not an import. I know it comes with the responsibilities. Getting captaincy obviously came with its own responsibilities, but nothing I wasn't used to. So I kind of just turned it around and thought, what role do I want to make for myself here? Is it a leader? Is it, core of the group? Is it setting standards at training? And just have put that own pressure on myself so I know that I can sort of reach my standards. It's nice though when you just listed that, there's so many Australians that have come over here and so many sort of Australians with British passports that have come over as well. So it's fun to see that sort of mix up of which teams got which involvement. And it's, not just all the African nations with their flair and whatnot. There's quite a few Australians over here sort of just filling those spots. So yeah, no added pressure apart from the ones I put on myself, which I normally do with standards that I want to set for myself. So yeah.
As part of the research for this episode, I was reading a profile on you in the South Australian Sports Institute, and it said that here we go, I was scooping you. It said that the best advice you'd ever been given was, and I quote, "Think training is hard, try losing," which is like brilliant but brutal.
I love that.
It's great, isn't it? And we know that in previous seasons of the Super League, Sirens have been down the bottom end of the table. So how do you personally handle sort of coming off of a loss or feeling like you either individually or collectively have maybe underperformed at times?
Yeah, it's especially when we've got those long bus journeys home up to Scotland in our first year, because we were losing quite a bit. Obviously, Kat getting pregnant left the sort of environment, that was sort of another bit that made that a little bit trickier. And because I come from Contacts, who were a very successful club, I wasn't used to losing as often as we were. But I think what helped is you could see within the group, everyone was trying their absolute hardest to make sure that wasn't the result. Like if I was sort of watching a group and everyone was whinging and didn't want to get involved and it's all too hard, I would have thought, what's the point then? Why are we even rocking up to these games if we're already going to put it down as a loss? Why are we even traveling and wasting our time and money? So I think because I could see the core group that was there were just willing to fight every match and it didn't go our way, that's what kept me motivated, which I think moving into season 2, I know we lost the pulse in round 1 at Super 10. We shouldn't have lost that. And then we were quite competitive with Loughborough and we were up at half time but lost that one. And then the third match we played Surrey and we won at home. But I was like, no, we've got it. This group has got it. They've got that mentality that they're going to go in and fight whoever walks in front of them. So I'm willing to stick with that. So first year was very tricky just because off court it was hard. My boyfriend was still back home, so he wasn't over here. But I think the excitement of it being a new team, new franchise, and I'm in the Super League maybe shadowed all that doubt of being like, this isn't fun, we're losing. And then when second year rolled around and, Jeremy moved over, we were playing well and the mentality had shifted, I was like, yeah, like this is worth sticking with. Obviously COVID happened and that season got cancelled, but you can see that obviously with this year that it's carried on. We've really stuck together and made sure that mentality, that winning mentality and competitiveness is, flowing right through the squad.
Yeah. And since you became captain, I think it's fair to say that your leadership of Sirens on court has made waves off court as well, particularly with the statement you made in an interview saying we are one of the big guns. We absolutely love that. We've referenced it so many times. We love it. Yeah. So what would you say your strengths are as both an athlete, captain and a person?
Strengths as a leader, I like to think that how I behave and how I hold myself wouldn't change with or without a title. It's just how I'm going to behave regardless. I like to set quite high standards for myself, and not unrealistic, but still high standards for the rest of the squad as well. That how can I ask someone else to match those standards if I'm not doing it myself? But once we agree upon them, there's no dipping below that. That's what we've decided, and everyone's committed to that, and that's it. So yeah, holding people accountable for those sort of things, I think, is a huge quality of mine, that I'm not afraid to have tough conversations with people because I have enough respect for them. I work hard to build those relationships with girls, or, you know, ones I'm close with, ones I'm not, ones I don't have a lot in common with off court. So when it does come time to, in the moment, I can make a comment, I know they're going to know it's coming from a good place because I put in that work into the relationships and we have that respect. So that was huge for me over COVID as well. I guess we had plenty of downtime to really work hard to sort of solidify those units and connections that, yeah, since it's come here, I will not shy away from a challenge. If someone's, you know, questioning whether it's acceptable or not, I'm happy telling them if it is or isn't, if they need to lift. And I think people have appreciated that as well. And vice versa, let me know if I'm slipping, let me know if I'm not doing this in the right way. There's no point whinging about stuff if you haven't made a point to sort of try and fix it. So yeah, accountability is huge. Relationships and respect is huge. And just really having that mentality that we're here to compete and we're not a walk in the park and we're not here to fill numbers. So everyone's sort of taken it on. I think it took a bit just because I was a new person, new face, and I was calling people up on stuff. But since we've been getting results, I think everyone sort of started to develop that behaviour as well. And now we have no egos and we don't win. So I think everyone about the travel was like, oh, centralised venue. And we sort of thought, you don't have to travel from Glasgow down to London every week. But we decided before the season even started, we do not whinge about that because, you know, we're fortunate enough to play netball. So why are we going to whinge and take ourselves out of it? So yeah, no egos, no excuses. And it's just a good culture that we've developed this year.
Love Amazing. And talking about that culture as well. So I'm pretty sure that Sirens have captured the hearts of almost every neutral fan and even some non-neutrals, I would say, this season. And we've started to see a real shift in netball in Scotland in general over the recent years, with the appointment of Karen Atkinson as technical director in 2019, Tamsin Greenway as Thistle's head coach in 2020, and of course, Claire Nelson's appointment as CEO of Netball Scotland in 2015. So you can really see the impact that these incredible women are having on and off the court. So how have these key netball figures influenced that team culture at the club?
I think with Karen and Tamsin having been like players at this elite level before is just, you can't even question how beneficial that's been for us. They get it. They get the emotion you have with the players. They get when you're trying hard, but you might not get results or something. So it's nice to know that they're on your side because they've been in that position before. Both being mid-court as well, we're loving life as in the videos when they come up for technicals. So yeah, with sort of the combination of Claire Nelson as well, it's just netball high performance excellence pretty much, you know, kind of what I said before about the standards. If they've seen that successful things happen, if you work to this level, they're going to plan a program at that level and expect players, if you're committing, to behave at that level the whole time. And I think that's always been there, but maybe just not reinforced or not followed up, or everyone agrees, but it hasn't been put into place. Whereas the last couple of years, it's really just been, that's how it is here now. And that's we're not sort of stepping back from that. So having them involved and just, obviously they're both very successful, that why not copy what successful people have done before? It's clearly worked and it's clearly getting results this year that, yeah, it's been huge. And with Leslie McDonald as our head coach as well, sort of in and out of the program this year, and seeing her learn from Karen and Tamsin with the support from Claire Nelson, it's just, yeah, we're actually so lucky when you look at the staff we have as Sirens that we have the amount of sessions we do with these names, because we're learning so much and just working so hard to do well for them and give back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been amazing this year watching the progress of Sirens. And I think that, you know, you personally have contributed so much to that, which is really awesome. So thinking about your entire netball career, so you've obviously represented Australia at under 21s, you've played in the SSN, you've played in the Super League, and you were also selected for the Legends Series earlier this year. So out of all of those teams that you've played with, which players that you've worked with have challenged and taught you the most as a netballer?
out of those teams, I would definitely say Sirens, because I got a whole lot of more responsibility from players, coaches, myself, the outside, that I sort of welcomed with open arms, you know, like just give me responsibilities and a challenge, and to see if I can sort of match that and make it better. Like, I love that. Like, just, yeah, throw us sort of many opportunities that show we can grow. And I'll love that, which I probably didn't get from the other teams. The other teams are more just so exciting to be in. You know, the Legend Series, I remember when I got that call and I thought, are you sure they meant me? Like, and they told me the names that were involved. And I was like, this is before we'd had the year we'd had. You know, we were, last time we would have seen Sirens play, we were second to bottom. But I was like, is this a token invite because I'm an imp? I was like, I'm taking it. I'm not saying no. Like, say yes before they change their mind. And just being able to see everyone involved in that, it was just such a fun time, especially because you didn't know whether the season was going to go ahead or not with the restrictions. But to do that and tick it off was like, what a fun experience that may never happen again. Under 21 Australian was a joy, but again, just so exciting to be there, and what an opportunity, as with T-Birds, but it had its highs and lows. Whereas this, with the amount of independence I've seen in myself and maturity from the start to end, I've loved everything that's happened the last 3 years with Sirens, the highs and the lows, because the highs are worth so much more when you've gone through the lows with the same group of girls as well. So yeah, definitely Sirens. And
are there any individual players in particular who've had a big impact on you throughout your entire netball career?
Back home at Contacts, I play with my older sister, and we're both mid-court, and we've both been through seasons and finals with each other. But because she's my older sister, there was a funny age when we were about 14, 15, and she could see I was taller than her and I was getting picked in teams that she wasn't. And it took her about 6 months to figure out how she was going to go about it. And then after that, she was my biggest support out of anyone. So she was almost a bit nervous that why is she doing better than me? And then as soon as she figured it was not a bad thing for her, she was massive. So she was the one that was always like, go for this, go for that, push yourself for this. She's so proud of me being over here. Like she's probably been a huge one that's just made me be like, yes, what I'm doing is right. Might not get it right every time, but I'm moving in the right direction. So definitely her. But then also just people in high performance programs like Nat Von Berto, Aaron Bell, Renee Ingles, and you see how hard they train and how professional they are. When they're next to you, you're like, okay, that's the standard I've got to reach. They're the values they've got, and they're not backing down. So there's been some big names that I've played with. Like my very first weekend I traveled with Thunderbirds, I roomed with Rebecca Bully. Like, wow. I was like, hi, and she gave me my dress. So lots of big names that lots of people would know. Probably the young ones of the Sirens don't know a lot of those names, especially because they're Australians. But I feel like true netball fans are like, yes, like Shani Layton was at T-Birds and I was there. It was all sort of that era that I just sort of thought, you guys are this, you're winning, you're elite, and that's your standard. So yeah, but on a more personal level, definitely my older sister.
Oh, I really love that. And talking about your family as well, we know that your father is a 7-time Premiership AFL player, Bruce Abernethy.
I'm going to love that you know that.
We have done our research. We've been Googling.
Shout out to Bruce.
Yeah, shout out if you're listening. So how big an influence on you was growing up in a successful sporting family?
Huge, yeah. It's funny because he loved that we were throwing ourselves into competitive sport, but also understood he doesn't always, just because he's played, he doesn't always need to give us feedback. He got that pretty early on, which was great, especially when, you know, you go through those off-season periods at Thunderbirds where you're not getting offered a contract, and he's the only one that probably knows what I'm going through, but he's the only one that knows I don't want to talk about it. Like, what's him telling me how annoyed he is or how sad he is for me going to help me at all? So he was probably so helpful in that he was just like, right, what else do we do? Like, what else options have we got? If family friends would come over, and I know that only ever meant it out of interest and kindness, it's like, what, well, you know, what's happening? You've had a great year. Why aren't you getting signed? He would always change the topic and just be like, why would you want to talk about it? And he could do all of that for me. So yeah, it's really nice knowing that he's been through it. He gets it. He moved. So I'm from Adelaide, and he moved to Melbourne to play when he was 17, moved out of home when he finished senior school and lived by himself and started his footy career. So when I made the decision to move over here, he was so just wrapped for me, proud. He knew the benefits I was going to get for the long run, knew this was an opportunity that probably doesn't come around for that many people, and was just so stoked and proud to see me sort of really find my own. He came over for Super 10 in first year and second year, and he was going to make it 3 in a row to get there. He just loved it, 10 teams in round 1. Thought it was just the coolest thing ever. So yeah, it's been helpful. He's going to love that you said that though, because when I was younger, everyone was like, Bruce Abernethy. And then now that we've started to make a name for ourselves in netball, a few times people have found him at, out for dinner, and they go, "Are you Bruce Abernethy?" He goes, "Yeah." And they go, "I coached your daughter, Gia," or "I coached," and he's like,
"Your cheers, Dad."
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's nice. He's been a great help, which has been good, especially having sort of 3 daughters playing netball. He's just had to ride the wave with us. So yeah, loving it.
Amazing. And so last question then for you, Gia, because I know we've been taking up a lot of your time today. So what are your hopes for your future in netball? Do you have aspirations to play back in Australia or anywhere else in the world? What's your kind of dream big scenario?
Dream big scenario. To be honest, I really am enjoying my time over here. Like, I'm 27 now. My boyfriend's moved over with me, living down in London as well. We're both experiencing life on the other side of the world that netball has sort of forced us into. It's when I got my contract and he sort of thought, "Are you going to play again? If you are, hell yeah, I'm with you. I'll apply for jobs. Let's take on this challenge." And what an opportunity. So, I mean, playing back home was always the dream, but I never got that opportunity. Whereas here, I really like that I've had that opportunity, and I've really enjoyed my time here, that I would hate to walk away from that just because something I wanted 5 years ago all of a sudden became available. So yeah, next 2-3 years, I'd love to play Super League still over here. Even if it's not playing netball over here, we really like it over in the UK, and plan to stay for a little bit, just because once we go home, that's it. We probably won't come back over. Houses, kids, all that sort of stuff starts to come into play. Whereas we've got this little moment in our life together at the same age where it's the selfishness where we can do what we want together. So yeah, I kind of love it over here and don't really want to go home too soon. So the netball dream, if it can keep me over here and that be sort of my job while I'm here, that's the dream. Definitely.
Amazing. Oh, well, we are so happy to have you here, Gia, and it's been awesome to chat to you today and hear your story. So thank you so much for coming on the show with us.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun. I'm so embarrassed that you Googled that about Dad, but I love it. I can't wait to tell him.
We do everything. If there's something about you online, we'll find it.
That sounds so creepy.
Sorry, we're not stalkers.
It's research.
Yeah, research.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Gia. Thank you so much for listening to episode 18 of Quarter Time. We can't wait to bring you even more netball chat and another awesome guest next week.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Quarter Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you think of the matches this weekend and which players have stood out for you.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.